Great. So we are going to begin with the summation of the Chadash issue. I've called this Ashkenazi Psak after the Ramah and the Bach permit Chadash. The S, of course, is a mistake. So, in terms of reading the Hebrew, who do I see? I should see Jean, but all right. Jean, would you please begin? Ulam Bartzot Ashkenaz.
My page begin by Habesh Shal B'Chalomo.
No, you've got to go one up.
Oh, this was
Ulam
not printed.
Bartzot Ashkenaz, the first page.
Alors, I read here. Ulam Bartzot Ashkenaz ובפרט במדינת פולין, רוב האנשים לא היו נזהרים בדין זה.
So we are reading a summary by Rav Ovadia Yosef in nice modern Hebrew, who says that in Ashkenaz, and particularly in Poland, people did not keep the Yisur of Chadash. Mipnei.
מפני שהיה קשה מאוד להחמיר בארצות הללו בעניין זה.
So he says because we didn't want to be strict. Very difficult to be strict. Sharei.
שם נוהגים לזרוע את החיטים בקיץ ולקצור אותם בראשית החורף.
So if you sow in the summer and you reap at the beginning of the winter, then you can't eat until after Pesach. And that's much too long to go without grains and to go without beer. בערך
בחודש חשוון, ואז היו צריכים לשמור על התבואה במחסנים עד לאחר הפסח כדי שיוכלו לאכול ממנה. והדבר היה קשה מאוד.
Now here we have a great example of reality forcing halacha to accommodate.
לפיכך דנו הפוסקים, אם יש להם לבני אשכנז על מה לסמוך.
So what does a posek do? Wants to accommodate the halacha to the reality. Let's see if we can give a legal justification to what the Ashkenazi Jews do. Bameh
שלא נזהרו באיסור חדש. ולמעשה, בכמה מקומות כתבו הפוסקים, ועל צבעם הרמה, לדון בספרות שונות להקל בזה.
Now we read them. We read the Balei Tosafot, we read the Ramah. It's mainly sveka. You bring all sorts of doubts in terms of reality. Perhaps they brought the grain from the south of France. Perhaps there was a rare planting in the winter which was able to be reaped in the spring. Perhaps. But
the strongest header was that the tvua of a goy is not concerned.
But that's the Kiddush of the Bach, and we haven't gotten there yet.
האחרונים נסמכו בזה על דעת הגאון בעל בית חדש.
אתה הקדמת בחצי שנייה, אוקיי?
שפסק כי אין איסור חדש נוהג אלא בתבואה של יהודים.
And that's the Bach. It's midrabanan, and only in Jewish-owned fields, if it's owned and farmed by non-Jews, then you can use the that fact, just as we did in Orlain Kilayin Chutz Haaretz, to justify ignoring the prohibition. אבל
בתבואה של גויים לא נוהג איסור חדש, ומאחר וכל התבואה המיוצרת בחוץ לארץ מיוצרת על ידי גויים.
And since all the agricultural work and ownership of land was non-Jewish, certainly in the past, in Chutz Haaretz, and probably today as well, there's no problem with eating Chadash.
ממילא לא ישייך שם
there, in Ashkenaz. Rav Ovadia Yosef is writing in Israel. There's no problem with Chadash. Gam HaGaon.
רבי יחזקאל כצנלבויגן, דודו של הגאון בעל שרגת אריה.
Okay, Yechezkel Katzenellenbogen was born in Brisk, Lithuanian rabbi, lived in the late 17th and mid 18th centuries. He became the rabbi and Av Bet Din of Ahu. The community is known
this
as
is
Ahu.
the one, yes.
And what is Ahu?
Eh
Aleph
bien,
Hey. Av?
Altona, Weidenstock, Hamburg,
Altona, Hamburg, and Wandsbek.
Van,
Exactement. Okay. So this was a very prominent rabbinate, Altona, Hamburg, Wandsbek, and in the 18th century was certainly one of the plum rabbinical positions. We're going to hear a lot about these communities when we deal with the Chacham Tzvi and his son, the Rabbi Yaakov Emden. A lot of politicking and fighting over the rabbinate. 3 communities in an area of Germany that was also occupied by Denmark for a while, and they were unified. So it was a very prestigious rabbinate. Katzenellenbergen was a very eminent posek. He wrote Shelot to Chuvot Knesset Yechezkel, and he goes along with a Bach with no problem at all. Katav lahakel.
בנידון זה, מהטעם האמור,
Follows
אולם
the Bach. Ulam.
אחיינו, his brother-in-law,
No, his nephew. Anefa Jean. Achyan is Anefa. Okay.
גיסו. הגאון השרגת אריה שפך כאש חמתו על המקהילים בזה, עד שכתב שהתורה חוגרת שק על דבריהם. מה זה חוגרת?
Now, what's chogeret sak? Choger. To wear sackcloth, mourning, avelut.
חוגר שק על דבריהם.
sak va'efer yutzal harabim. Okay.
שאינם לאמיתה של תורה, שבאו להקל באיסור תורה מפני סברות מחודשות.
So here you have the battle always between the old established halacha, which according, as we said, to the poskim was rooted in the climate of Eretz Israel, against the new poskim, who are saying we have to accommodate, and that battle is always there from the beginning until the end. Actually, it's in all legal systems, but we're not going to give comparative legal philosophy now. Shagas Aryeh was said, no, he's a machmir, svarot chadashot, it's all new stuff, we don't want this.
ובבחת נסמך השגת אריה על דברי הירושלמי, ששם משמע בפירוש שאיסור חדש נוהג גם בתבואה של גויים.
But of course it would. The Yerushalmi has no problem because it's Eretz Israel, and there's no skin off anybody's nose to keep the law of Chadash, so you shouldn't use any of the outs and excuses that you can get. But the Yerushalmi would never, I assume, think about employing this rule in Northern Europe. Now he says something very interesting.
What's que c'est?
Line 18. Actually, I will say, merci beaucoup. אנחנו נחליף קוראים. אני מודה לך מאוד. And I saw Ranon somewhere. Ranon,
yes, here I am.
Would you like to read the Kol Kach?
Sure.
This is quite cute. Well,
yeah. וכל כך היה בעל השגת הרי מחמיר בדבר, עד שהוראה שאסור להשתמש בכלים של אותם המקילים באיסור חדש, כדין מי שבישל בכליו נבלות וטרפות.
Wow, the Shagas Aryeh says, you know what? You cannot, as if anybody has cooked chadash, grains, groats, in a vessel, the vessel has to be kashed. It's just like eating treif. The horeh and hipasken ki.
והורה, כי יש להגעילם ולהכשירם כדת. This is appropriate for Erev Pesach. לפני שיבואו להשתמש בהם.
You gotta kasher them. You gotta do hagalah, libun chamur. Now that really is way out, okay? גם הגאון.
גם הגאון רבי אליהו מווילנה היה מחמיר בדין חדש בזמן הזה. אך למעשה, רוב בני אשכנז לא שמעו בקולו של השגת אריה.
Now the Gaon of Vilna was never a practicing rabbi, and he, as we all know, is a firm adherent of whatever's written in the Gemara. So it's not surprising that he would take a hard line. But most of the poskim who had any rabbinical position at all were Mekel. So, and the Shagat Aryeh turns out to be an exception. And now he says something very interesting of Ad Yosef. Mipnei.
שהרבנים לא שמעו בקולו של כשרגת אריה מפני שקושי הדבר,
Again,
ומאחר
Koshi Adava, it's impossible to ask Jews to keep this law. ומאחר
והגאון השגת אריה היה מחמיר כל כך בדבר, נמנעו מלקבלו כרב בשום קהילה מקהילותיהם.
And the Shagas Aryeh never got a stella, not for long, because they said, it's impossible, you're asking us to do something impossible. וכך היה,
וכך היה אני רוב ימיו, והיה
he was
נודד
always
ממקום
poor,
למקום,
never had any parnasa, והיה,
נודד ממקום למקום, ומרביץ תורה בישראל מתוך הדחק.
he was always very, very
זקנתו,
close to the poverty line, but he kept on writing and teaching ad.
שלעת זקנתו נתמנה כרב בעיר מצ שבצרפת.
How old was the Shagas Aryeh when he got his position in Metz? You know?
About 70.
He was 70. And what did he say to the Kihila to convince them to take him?
That he
He
will
said, I am
certainly
going to give you-
live another few years, many
I'm going
years.
to give you, as the voice on my left says, 20 years. And he gave them 20 years. He died when he was 90. So there we are. So by the way, by the time he got to Metz, he had mellowed. And he didn't make an issue of Kadash, because the French, you know, we're not going to give up their grains and their beer and everything else. So that is a summary of the position. What I have here is an interesting quote in relation to the Baal Shem Tov. Avi, would you read, please? Habesh Zal.
Habesh Zal שאל בחלומו על קדש בזמן הזה מה דינו. יענו לו שלאחר פטירת הבח ציננו את הגיהינום מם יום מחמת שהיה צריך זה לכבוד הבח.
Now this is a Hasidic story that the Baal Shem Tov had a dream. In his dream, a Bach is going up to heaven, and they cool down the fires of Gehenna by 40 days in order that he should have air conditioning during his sojourn, the mandatory sojourn that we all know we're going to have to undergo in Gehinnom. Question is, how much air conditioning do you get? So the Bach got a lot of air conditioning. So when the Besht had this dream, so this is a really Hasidic story, Uva Boker, what happened, Avi?
בוקר עמד הבש ושלח להביא שיכר מחדש.
I can now have beer which is made from Chodosh.
שתה ואמר, כדאי הוא הבח לסמוך עליו.
Now, the other Hasidic urban legend is that one of the Bach's rabbinates was in Mezhiboj. And why is that significant? The
Bach was Rav in Mezhibos.
Bach was a Rav in Mezhibos, also in Belz. But who was the famous Hasidic Rebbe in Mezhiboj?
Baal Shem Tov.
The Baal Shem Tov, exactly.
Yes,
As the voice on my left said a half hour ago. Mezhiboj. Okay, so those two things, the Baal Shem Tov was happy to drink beer, that is Hasidim drink. You should know that, of course, it's a mitzvah to enjoy this world in the Hasidic theology, okay? And dreams can often help. Whether they're expression of what you'd really like or not is, of course, a different story. But if we go to the opposition, Shmuley, would you like to read, though you're Hungarian, let's read the Polish Taz, okay? Uchvar Tarach.
Uchvar Tarach.
Mori Chami. Now, who is the Taz? The Taz was
He's the son-in-law of the Bach.
Son-in-law of the Bach, Rabbi David Segal Halevi. Okay, he was the rabbi of Ostraha and Lvov. Wrote a very important commentary on the Shulchan Aruch. But you know, often you have in families of commentators a bit of a problem. The Bach wrote a major commentary on the Torah and reached certain conclusions, but his son-in-law has to do something different. So the Taz often argues with a Bach. Perhaps he didn't get on that well with his father-in-law, I don't know. Nothing personal ever occurs in the literature. We do know people who took umbrage at each other, but whatever it is, it's not unusual for the Taz to argue with a Bach. So we'll read the Gaon of Vilna too, okay? And he as well, has his own agenda to pursue. He says if it's written in the Talmud like Mayim Achronim, you've got to keep it, okay? But the Taz has an issue with the Bach. So he goes on and says, well, Chvar Tarach Mori Chami. Now the word Tarach is Tircha, okay? Tircha means what?
You make efforts to prove that it's...
But is Tircha usually used in a negative or in a positive?
Negative.
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 Thank you, Gael. And the voice on my left. Tircha dit Sibura, don't be matriach me, okay, is always negative. Already see that the Bach is going to be negative about his father-in-law. וכבר טרח מורי חמי בדבר זה,
למצוא היטב מצד ירושלמי, שמשם הוכיח רב יהודה בעל התוספוס.
Rabbi Yitzchak, the Ri in the Tosfos of Dompierre in northern France, the Ri Azaken, okay, the Elterary, let's read on, בעל התוספוס,
שיש איתו אפילו בשל עכו"ם. ואחרי כן נמשכו כל הגדולים.
אחרי זה, and so the Bach has laid out a heter, and he's even managed to get the Yerushalmi into the heter. I didn't give you all his ingenious reasoning, as I said I would not. You have to read it by yourself. Take too much time, and it's very, very intricate. But most of the Gdolim have followed the Bach. Va'amar,
שיש לו פירוש אחר על הירושלמי, שלא כדברי הרי, ואינו אין לנו עסק בזה, אף אם יהיה לנו פירוש נכון על הירושלמי.
So the Taz says, look, that's not what we're getting into. The Bach may have a good commentary on the Yerushalmi, אבל מה, אין לנו.
להרים ראש נגד כל הפוסקים.
In other words, you've got the Shulchan Aruch, and you've got the Rambam, and you've got many poskim. Again, they were all Sfardim, okay? And the Taz doesn't mention that. He doesn't have to, because he's looking at it from a textual point of view, not from the point of view of somebody who cares about what the community is going to have to do because of reality. And now we're going to read the actual words of the Shagas Aryeh. Now, he's quite tough, okay? And again, he was a very prickly indeed. And I don't know who'd like to read the Shagas Aryeh. I might, okay? ולעניין אם חדש נוהג בשל נוכרי או לא, כבר הסכימו התוספות והרבה מקט הראשונים זו שחדש נוהג בשל נוכרי, ולא פקפק אדם מעולם עד שקם בעל הבח. Now, Shagas Aryeh is fairly tendentious here. He said nobody thought that we could ignore Chadash until the Bach comes along. V'yitir lanu. And he allowed it, v'horeh de Chadash eino noheg b'shel nochrim, and said, well, if it's non-Jewish fields and farming, it's not mechayev. U'meshabeach et atzmo shesatar et rayot hatosafot v'siatam. And Shagas Aryeh has a dig. He says, and the Bach praises himself that he's able to find a way around the Tosafot and the others who follow their line. And he brings many proofs. But they're not valid at all. And actually his sources disprove his view. Asur Chadash Murupa Ma'od B'malchut Zo. And you know what the result is? People in Poland are not keeping Chadash anymore, or in Lithuania, or in Russia. Elas Sheripa Yidei Anashim HaYireim L'Nafsham Charedim. He's also put the Charedim down, the ones who do make an effort. What? Well, they feel that they're wasting their time. And everybody relies on the Bach. לכן עזרתי כגיבור חלצי להראות לכל, שלא ירד לסוף דעת רבותינו בעלי התוספות, כל דבר הורדה, בנויים על... what's כתוב?
וראיותיו בזה בנויים על...
That's to do with kushiot and terutzim shetzrichim biur, but look it up. It doesn't interfere with the meaning of the Shagat Aryeh. And the Gra, habach kishitato, disfira lei, eino noheg b'shel of de kokavim, uchvar hiku al kod kodo. And he has already been smitten on his skull, says the Gaon about the Bach. V'chol ha'archonim, ushgaga yatsa mitachat yado v'tova hava lei kan hashtika. And he should have kept quiet. Udvarav duchukim od v'chata b'atzmo sheretzono liyashev haminhag. And then, of course, the Gaon says something interesting. He says, actually, all the Bach is trying to do is to justify what Jews are doing. Aval en bidvarav kedai afilu yashev haminhag. Gaon of Vilna, sitting in Vilna in his house, in his Bet HaMidrash, in his klois, not involved really in running a community at all, is able to say, it doesn't wash. And but he was not at the center of the issue. And this is always the tension that we see between the Lamdanim and the Poskim. The difference
question here.
Yeah, sure. Question.
Is it accurate that Tiku al kol kodo kol achronim?
Of course not.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
Of course not.
What's the chronological relationship between the Gra and the Shagat Aryeh?
Shagas Aryeh was end of the 17th century until the late 18th century. The Gra is about the same time. Sorry. The Gra is 1720 to 1797. So the Shagas Aryeh came first. Okay, he died in 1785, but he lived a long time. So the Gra is 1720 to 1797.
So the Gra would have seen the Shagas Aryeh?
Yeah.
Yes, they had respect for one.
Yeah. He probably would, but that's the historian's question. I'll leave it to you. Okay.
After the fall of Rome,
Yeah. But certainly when he says, I'll call her achronim, that is an absolute guzma.
Exaggeration.
An exaggeration.
And what is the meaning of Katuf? What is the Rashi Tevot?
It's to do with
I don't find it in my book.
It's rare. I have to recollect the exact thing, but it's actually a fairly neutral term. It means that we have a sugya that's full of difficulties, and you have to work hard to resolve them. So I'll let you look at that. The two approaches are very typical of halacha in general. In other words, some poskim, well, actually they say in a semi-humorous way, some rabbis spend their time finding solutions to problems. Other rabbis spend their time finding problems with solutions. And this, of course, comes down to the role of the Rav Posek. Is there a positive role to justifying what the Jewish community is doing because it needs to, for very good reasons, including survival? Or do we have to follow, as far as we can, every posek to the strictest view? Okay? And the two modern, the 19th and early 20th century codes of Jewish law, Aruch HaShulchan and Mishnah Brura, split along those very lines. Now, I've often given examples, and this is just another example. The Aruch HaShulchan is out to help the Jews. I want to solve the problems and allow Orthodox Jews to continue doing things which are necessary for them to live and not feel that they are breaking halakha. The Mishnah Brura is out to make sure that what we do comports with almost every single text, even if they are extremely strict. And although he will give us a little wiggle room here and there, but again, the Chafetz Chaim Rabbi Kagan, okay?
Kagan.
was a Rosh Yeshiva, primarily Tzaddik, Rosh Yeshiva, head of the yeshiva in Radin and Koilel Kodshim, and he's a man of the book. The Aruch HaShulchan was the Av Bet Din and Maradatra of Navardok. He sat on the Bet Din, and they say he wrote his Aruch HaShulchan as he was giving Piskei Din. And he was a famous masmich. He gave smicha to most of the greats of East Europe at the time, gave a special smicha class at 5:30 on a Shabbat morning. Cold Russian morning, they came to his place, he gave them some tea and cake, and then they would go through the stuff in Orach Hayim and Yoredai. He's very famous for once having asked a question about somebody's bleeding and you only have white bandages. What do you do? So many of the Lamdanim who came to this Smicha group started to talk about the question of tzviyah. If you get red blood on a white bandage, is this like painting or making color? And therefore there may be a problem and you'd have to do something derech shinui. So he got very angry and he said, look, firstly it's pikuach nefesh. First of all, you staunch the wound. After you've stopped the blood, then you think about whether it is asur or mutar on Shabbat. So let's see, what does the Aruch HaShulchan say? So I'm going to go back up here. I don't know whether anybody wants to take the Hebrew challenge on, but Jean will get you to start. Aval b'medinotenu, Harav Yechiel Michal Alevi Epstein, okay, and Av Beit Din of Navardok, author of Aruch HaShulchan, and practical rabbi in every sense of the word, concerned to justify minhag. Aval b'medinotenu.
If I may ask, add, the Aruch HaShulchan is the only rabbi who agrees with Kiddushin al Tnai.
Okay, I see that's a favorite of yours. I will say yes in a guarded way, and we'll have a look, actually, since you raised it a couple of times, when we get to Rav Elchanan Spector, and some others will talk about Kiddushin al Tnai, also Reb Chaim Oizer too. אבל
במדינותינו מדינת רוסיה לפני הפסח אין עדיין זמן זריעה כלל, אם לא במקרה רחוקה פעם ל-20 שנה.
You'd only have yashan ready to eat after Pesach once in 20 years. It's very rare. וכמעט
הוא מהנמנעות להיזהר באיסור חדש.
And it's almost impossible to keep איסור חדש, כי הקציר,
אצלנו בירח אב,
the harvest was in Av in the summer, וצריכים להמתין,
8 חודשים.
and then you have to wait 8 months before you can have any grain or any beer. It is impossible.
It's curious that the Rav Yosef said that the Katsir is in Cheshvan. That's 3 months off.
Yeah, whatever it is, the harvest, it was not standard in Northern Europe and certainly not in Northeastern Europe at all. So you could vary. You could have Av, you could have Cheshvan, but you're still stuck with many months between Cheshvan and Iyar. Okay? And he says 8 months because he's counting from Av. Over Sanhedrin. Jean, can you finish up?
over Sanhedrin דף י"א תניא, על ג' ארצות מעברין את השנה.
Okay, do you know what that sugya is about?
About היבוך השנים?
Yeah, no, it says. Okay, Ibur Hashana means
גליל, יהודה, והשלישית אני לא זוכר.
Okay, so there's a discussion in the Gemara about doing Ibur Shana, adding an Adar, and there's an issue about when the harvest ripens in Yehuda, and the Gemara is concerned, and it says, if the barley in Yehuda is already ripe, and then you want to do an Ibur Shana, they'll have to wait an extra month before Pesach comes. And it's very difficult to wait a month. So what's Aruch HaShulchan saying? If the Gemara says it's difficult to wait 1 month before you get the new crop, Kal vachomer, 8 months is impossible. Okay. Ranon. Ranon, would you continue, please?
Oh.
Kama kasha aleinu.
Yeah.
No.
Line 12. Kama.
כמה קשה עלינו להמתין 8 חודשים מאכילת חיטים וסורים ושיבולת צואר, שמזה עושים גרויפין, וזה כל אכילתנו.
Now, what
Ushtiat.
are greifen? Anybody know?
No.
Okay, greifen actually is groats.
Goes in the soup, yeah.
G-R-O-A-T-S, which is what you do when you take kernels of oats or wheat, rye or barley, and you do a minimum like heating up. And it's similar to what we would call kasha, except kasha is also minimally cooked, roasted buckwheat. But it's all the same sort of thing. Now, this is what they ate. Don't think that in the shtetl they were eating very well. Not at all. They had greifen, and he says, Ranon v'zeh,
וזה כל אכילתנו.
that's all we have to eat. Groats, okay? So we are in a different position. I wouldn't hanker back to the shtetl if I were you. Okay.
ומשתיית, this is depends on להמתין 8 חודשים, ומשתיית שיכר כל החורף.
And the whole winter you won't be able to drink beer. That's what they drank. And it's also high in nutrition. רק יחידים.
הזהירים בזה וקשה עליהם כידוע.
And even those who are careful, life is very difficult. I mean, this is tough.
ולכן קמו גדולי חכמי ישראל למצוא היתרים. ורבים בנו על ההיתר שאינו נוהג בשל עצמו.
Okay, Yitz, we can hear you.
Yes, hello, sorry.
No worries. Okay. So what we said
I was
here,
murmuring, wasn't I?
right?
Apologies.
Chachmei Israel therefore arose and found heterim, and many built their heter on the Bach that is non-Jewish. Okay, Avi, would you like to read some from line 15? V'ha'omnam.
האמנם אתה שזכינו לאור זרוע לצדיק, אתה לישראל לב שמחה.
Now, he's referring to the Or Zarua, the book. Rabbi Moshe Or Zarua Vina. So he's just making a nice little sort of optimistic line out of the book called Or Zarua. All right. Ve'en bazeh.
שום ספק.
Simcha. Okay, so the Israel Leib will have Simcha. Then the Or Zarua is exactly what the Bach says. ואין בזה שום ספק.
אין בזה שום ספק, העולם סוברים כרבנו ברוך, בריבה, ורבנו אביגדור הכהן, ורבנו יצחק בעל הר זרוע, ורבנו מנחם,
Neil Tzedek,
ומרדכי הגדול,
ומהריל, and the famous Yaakov Levi of Germany, okay, 14th century Maharil, founder of Nusach Ashkenaz in the modern form. The Chadash
בחוץ לארץ, the Rabbanan, the Moshe Bier HaRazarua.
Okay, so, we are very familiar with this by now. Robert Vassell, would you like to finish this off for us? Line 17. Sure.
דאיסור חדש תלוי בעומר, דממקום שאין מביאין עומר, שם אין חדש נוהג, דכן הוא פשוט הסוגיה
ריש פרק כל קורבנות,
ועיקר ההתר שאנו סוברים כשיטת רבותינו שפסקו כחכמים דרבי אליעזר.
בחוץ לארץ חדש is מדרבנן, okay? Because there's no korban omer, all right?
Yeah.
That was his view.
וכתם אור זרוע שהם טעמים נכונים לפי סוגיית הש"ס וכל בית ישראל נקיים.
Nikiyim. And that's an important word. All the house of Israel who don't keep Chadash, they are naki, they are clear. V'item nikiyim b'nei Hashem ve'adam. Everybody is okay. Now, how does the Mishnah Brura go about dealing with this? And I will read this because we'll want to be a little brief because we want to do some of the economic stuff. Kama achronim סידרו למסורתם ממנהג העולם המקלים בזה. Many Acharonim, opposite of the Gra, okay, say that we're going to find support for the custom to be Mekel. וסיבת הדבר איתי מפני שסוברים שמישהו רוצה להיזהר צריך להיזהר בכל חומרות. Now then the Mishnah Berurah slips something in here. He says, look, I understand or I've heard And this is following the Shagas Aryeh. That the reason why we're not going to say it's Asur is because there is a view that once you say it's Asur, then it's Asur the whole way, and it'll make your kelim treif, and you have to do Hagala. Sheikhar v'yash v'chen b'plitat kelim v'hu davar kasher lizaher b'not elu, and that would be impossible. Okay, and so we're not going to keep Chadash at all. אבל לעניות דעתי אין נכון הדבר דחי בשביל שקשה לו להיזהר בכל החומרות יקה לגמרי. Mishnah Berurah wants to compromise. Granted, we're not going to treat Chadash as making your kelim treif and needing them to be kasher, but at least we should try and keep the Isur as far as we can. ושמעתי מיודעים שקמח מחיטים הטובים כולם מנזרעים בחשוון, ואף שבימות החורף כמה פעמים נעשה שיכר מסעורים ישנים, ובספק כבר יש לנו דעת או זרוע, שכתב לך של רבנן, ואבי ספק רבנן, וכן בפליטת הכלים יש צדדים להקל. אבל בגרויפן עצמם, now he says, look, all sorts of derivatives, I understand you don't need to be careful. But the groifen atzman, which are, as I said, a lightly roasted oats, wheat, rye, barley, v'shibolet shual, b'mintatenu shem vadai chadash, after lo nuchal gam mazel limchot ba'olam. Now, again, the Mishnah Berurah says you cannot protest against people ignoring Chadash when it comes to their basic diet of groats. And the Mishnah Berurah, of course, says the Achronim all wrote that it is okay not to keep Chadash. Here the Mishnah Berurah adopts the view that we learned about the Maharam of Rottenburg and the other medieval poskim who would never breathe a word to their community, but they themselves would be machmir. Mishnah Berurah wants us to take on the attitude of the great ones and say, we will be machmir.
They'd be machmir, they just wouldn't eat.
Yeah, or they would go hungry. I've got a question on my left. They'd have to basically give up anything made with flour. I mean, on Sukkot, we do something similar. You know, you won't eat anything made of flour outside of a Sukkah. This is a long time. It was very hard. And I'm telling you, they did not eat well. But this is almost impossible. You have to be a real tzaddik. Okay? Now, of course, the Mishnah Berurah, who's a man of the book and the text, says, but look, Gedolei HaRishonim, all of them, of course, Sephardim, the Rif and the Rosh and Rambam. Elohim Arif HaRosh Rambam Usmag ve'itur doesn't mention the Tur. The Tur is from
Marseille.
Very good. And the Smag was from Kuchi, and the Ritva, who was from where? Rabbi Yom Tov ben Seville, the man of Seville in Spain. Okay. ופסקה התוצאות במנחות, ככתב בשל העקום הוא מדרבנן, כמדרבנן על כל פנים מי הוא אסור, and I'm not going to go into that now. ואין לנו מכילים רק רבינו ברוך, בעל ספר התרומה, שכתב להקל במקומות הרחוקים בחול, ומיל צדק בשם רבי אביגדור כהן, בשם רבי יצחק בן אשר וריבה, שכתב להקל בשל נוכרים לגמרי, כמובן בבח, ואין יחידי נגד כל הניר, Ruvavata, all the majority, the Ruvavata are Sfardim, okay? וגם כמה מן האחרונים המקילים לא רצו להקל אלא בספק ולא בוודאי. You can find some words of retrenchment in the Achronim, but you know it's still far from being a consensus. גם בשולחן ערוך, כאן of your דעה, לא סתמו כפוסקים, דורייתא וכל גבני גם הרבה מן האחרונים תפסו כן ניכר. על כן בוודאי, מן הראוי ונכון לחוש לכל זה ולפרוש על כל פנים, מן ודאי חדש וכך נראה לי. So what the Mishnah Berurah says is let's sort of go halfway. If you know it's definitely chadash, and if it's not a derivative, but it is actually the 5 types of grain, then try and avoid it. ומי שירצה לתת לב על זה יוכל להשיג גם בחורף ממינים אלו מתבואה ישנה. If you pay a big price, then it's like many things, you'll be able to get Yashan. Today, of course, is not such a problem. That's it in terms of Isur Chadash. It's to do with Pesach in a way, so it may be timely. Now I want to go on to Ian's issue. So, Ian, I want you to read, please, line 36, estate management.
Rabbi, I have a guess for Katub from my son-in-law.
Yeah,
He says it may be. He says it's not very common. Kushiyot, terutzim, uviurim.
okay, that's
Maybe.
right. As I said, there are a lot of questions and answers, and you have to work hard to clarify the issue. Thank you, Robert. Okay, Jean?
What?
Jean,
Yes.
Kushiot,
Oh, no, I have no.
Katub, Kushiot,
Oh,
Ubayot, Terutzim, Uberurim.
אבל יש תו.
Yeah, Terutzim.
Kushiyot, terutzim, uviurim.
Kushot, Terutzim, Uberurim. Thank you, Robert. Okay. Ian, would you please read economic background? Arenda.
Arenda, literally yearly rent, is a Polish term designating the lease of fixed assets or of prerogatives, such as land, mills, inns, breweries, distilleries, or special rights, such as the collection of customs duties and taxes. The Arenda system was widespread in the economy of Greater Poland from the late Middle Ages until the early modern period. During this period, there was a significant rise in exports in minerals, timber, and agricultural products from Eastern Europe to the West, and a major growth in local industries, including the processing of salt and production of alcoholic beverages.
So we need a lot of industry development, a lot of customs and taxing. Marcel, would you please take it away from line 4? The majority of the
Polish nobility had little interest in the actual administration of their vast and remote estates, as well as insufficient capital and commercial skills to develop them.
Now, Poland is between East and West. The Russians were deep into being primitive at the time, so it didn't matter to them. They had serfs and czars and whatever they had. The Polacks were halfway between Eastern Europe and the West. Danzig, the free port, was a meeting place for East and West, and that's a whole other talk. So, but the Polish nobility were not well known for their Protestant ways, and they weren't interested in doing too much hard work. All they wanted to do was to reap profits. So what did they do? They were also disinclined.
Declined to involve themselves in the collection of royal taxes imposed on both the growing maritime trade and local industries.
And they didn't want to be seen as the people who took the taxes from the people, because they knew that that's so discontent. So therefore they turned
to the capital enterprise and expertise of the Jewish lessees, who frequently became the economic advisors and general factotums of the Polish magnates.
What is a factotum?
It's like Puba,
Puba. Somebody who runs the show. But what the word actually is interesting linguistically. Totem is total, everything. And the FAC is like from the German or Yiddish Fach. If I say somebody is a Fachman, what do I mean?
It's actually Latin.
It does go back. It does go back to the Latin. You're quite right. But if I say you're a Fachman, what do I mean?
A mover and shaker.
No. You're good with your hands. You're a cobbler.
An artisan.
Things. So the guy who can do all of the practical stuff. Okay. Factotum opposed. The first leases, Marcel.
The first leases to be held by Jews were of royal franchises for running a mint and operating salt mines and tax farming, including the collection of customs and duties on imports and exports. Often the same individuals would lease both the means of production and the collection of customs and excise.
Thank you, Marcel. Let's move down to Bernie. Bernie, can you take the theme up from until the middle?
Until the middle of the 16th century.
Yeah, Jews were among.
Just a moment. Till the
line 13.
I lost my. Okay. Until the middle of the 16th century, Jews were among the chief lessees of the customs houses in Eastern Europe, as is attested by Customs Register of 1580, written in mixed Hebrew and Yiddish. Indeed, the term arenda
Now,
was
arenda means a yearly rent.
it was adopted in Hebrew and Yiddish with a lessee, in particular the small-scale lessee, being called the arenda.
So you'll
Although-
see in literature, rabbinic literature, halakhic, and also literature in general of the time, they talk about a arenda. And the arenda often means the Jew who is in charge of developing, say, the salt mine or the alcohol plant. And also, he's taking the taxes in the custom house.
Donc it was a
Okay.
concession.
Sure, yeah. Although as time progressed,
Although as
Jack,
time
are you
Yes.
are you prepared
Although
to
as time
read?
progressed, measures were adopted to prevent Jews leasing custom houses. Jewish experts in financial ability in this field were in such demand that they were often made silent partners of nominal Christian lessees.
This is not the only time in history that there were laws against Jews, and the non-Jews needed their expertise, and they took them on as silent partners or what have you. In the remote areas,
In the remote areas of eastern Poland, a few Jews leased huge estates from absentee Christian landlords and became extremely wealthy. Others, on the other hand, of the financial scale, worked as inn and tavern keepers.
and we know from Yiddish literature how many Jews in Eastern Europe ran inns and taverns and had to serve the vodka to the non-Jews. And when they sold them, of course, they took the tax in, all right? So that's tough. When you come between a man and a Cossack and his vodka, you're asking for trouble.
Particularly when he's drunk.
Exactly. And we're in charge.
And were in charge of collecting hospital
The shopove,
alcohol tax, which then made them particularly unpopular with the Polish peasants and Cossacks. A statistic from the Berlin district shows that 89% of the village Jews engaged in these holdings operations were in inn or tavern keepers.
So that, Ian, is a poisonous mix. Okay, you're sort of asking for trouble there, and it's tough. Yitz, would you like to read?
Yes, thank you.
From line 2025,
because of the importance of the Arenda in Jewish economic life, problems concerning this institution were often the subject of resolutions of the councils of the Four Lands. One of the important takanot introduced by the council with the Bach's approval was the application of the chazakah principle to prevent undercutting among Jews.
The Bach, who was very, very influential in the Council of the Four Lands, was asked about if you had a Jew who got a concession and used it for 3 years, could another Jew come up and say, I'm going to offer better terms to the absentee landlord, and you are going to be thrown out of your farming rights. Now, the Bach, actually, as we read in the Tshuva, says that the classical chazakah, which is really evidence of ownership, which is supported by a legal claim that I bought this land or I got it as a gift, doesn't apply to tax farming or customs collection. But because he was concerned that the Jews would seem to be too interested in money and even undercutting each other, he wanted there to be a chazakah principle by takana, but not by din. Okay? So the takana.
The takana.
Line, please.
Am I carrying on?
Yeah, one more line. The takana.
The takana prohibited a Jew from attempting to acquire an arenda which another Jew had held for 3 years.
Okay, thank you. So, Harvey, would you like to read, please?
The arenda was an oral arrangement, or there was a contract?
That varied, okay? Sometimes it was written, but it was very informal. Normally, it was an oral an oral arrangement. There's a tshuva in the Bach where they couldn't find the document. Bach said it doesn't matter, you don't need a document. Most of these are oral arrangements between the absentee Polish Poritz, as he's called, and the Jewish tax farmer or customs collector. Okay, Harvey, could we please have in southeastern other takanot? 30.
In southeastern Poland,
Okay.
in particular, Jewish lessees found themselves between the hammer and the anvil, under pressure from the extortionate nobility for whom they were agents, and hated by the peasantry and the Cossacks. The attitude of the Jews themselves towards the peasants was often much more humane than that of the Jewish Polish landlords. However, the Jews were frequently maligned. They were accused falsely of interfering in the affairs of Greek Orthodox churches and villages leased by them. All the Jews living in the southeastern parts of Poland were attacked and thousands massacred in the Cossack and peasant uprising in the 17th century.
Known by
Khmelnytsky.
Khmelnytsky. So that, Ian, is really my answer to your question. But I'm going to back this up with tshuvot of the Bach. Two very interesting tshuvot, and that will bring us to the to wrap up the Bach and his period. David Parks, do you like reading Rabbinic Hebrew?
No, I'll pass on that one.
You'll pass, okay. So I will, in fact, also take this up. And let's just see a sample, okay, a very little bit excerpt. Livni harav hechasid ha'av bedin v'reish metifta kvod morenu harav Reb Leib natrei rachmana v'yavarche. Oh, it's tshuva to his son. And he will give all the honorific titles, okay? Chakirat HaChopove, אם יש בו דין חזקה מצד הדין או מצד התקנה, כאשר הוא בכל הארנדיס שדנים בהן דין חזקה. So he asks his dad, he says, look, how are we to deal with the Chopova? A Jew in my town has got a Chopova, he is selling vodka and he's taking the tax. Does he have a chazakah? So no other Jew should try and undercut him for a period of 3 years. Tshuva, medina in Torah chazakah lo be'arendis v'lo be'chopova. Actually, chazakah in terms of halachic law doesn't apply. Ve'ein ladun b'zedin chazakah. And chazakah is not a relevant matter here because chazakah is to do with a proof, okay, of your ownership rather than limiting competition, okay? There is, however, a concept in the Talmud of if a poor person is trying to get hold of a charcoal baked cake, well, not something very important, you should not come in and get to it before he does, okay? If you do, you're called a rasha. It doesn't say that you can't actually claim title, but you shouldn't do this sort of thing when you are in a superior position. Somebody's clearly wanting to buy something or obtain something, and you use your clout to get in ahead. There's a story of two rabbis, and one of them bought land, and then he was told that the other rabbi had been actually trying to buy it. So both rabbis said, we're not going to actually take ownership of the land, and was called Arad de Rabbanan. You may remember that Gemara, but, it was left as, a memorial to the fact that you shouldn't be interfering with others. The Kevan di Kerevach Gadol de Lo Nimsa B'Makom Acher, Chashiv Ke'Hefker, Umetzia de Bazeh Eino Nikra Rasha. But if something is unique, then this concept, this moral concept of Ani Hamahapek B'Chara doesn't apply. It makes sense, because Ani Hamahapek B'Charara, the charara is like, as I said, a cake made of baked on charcoal, is not very rare and not something that you really want to gain. So that sort of thing, keep yourself out and let the other person get what they want. But if it's a rare and expensive thing, then apparently Jewish law says naked competition is the name of the game. וכי לפסק רבנו תם שם כתוספתא, והשארי ובחושן משפט, סימן רשן זין והאם שם, כבר נמצא למרשל בתשובה שתופס כך. וכלל העולה מדינה אין כאן תורת חזקה ולא דין רשע, אלא שניצת תקנת המדינה נידון דין חזקה באורנדה. But we have nevertheless made chazakah apply to the arenda because they say we don't want to give the impression to the non-Jews of Jews being money-grabbing and undercutting each other. Aval b'chapove en bo takana. There's no takana that there is chazakah. V'chen danti arbe pamim b'tseiruf ha-manhigim ha-yodim ha-takana al amita. And we've discussed it in the council, and this is the important bit. Okay, Ian, are you looking carefully? Uchvar tiknu v'gazru barbe onshim. And we have tried to legislate and to threaten with punishment. Al miksat artsot b'malchutenu shelo yiskor shum Yehudi hachapova. No Jew should actually purchase a chapova. Do not make yourselves into those who sell alcohol, vodka to peasants and Cossacks and collect the tax. And without that tax, you're not going to sell it to them. B'shum inyan ba'olam. You know there's a tremendous danger to us because what do the goyim do? What do they say? Yehudim sholtim. The Jews are running the world. Umoshlim aleim, and they are running our lives. V'ochazim bam kimelachim v'sarim. They're acting like kings and like princes. And you know what will happen? Khmelnytsky. They start burning ambulances in Highfield Gardens. And you want me to say there's a chazakah here? Heaven forfend. We stay away as far as we can. Did it help? As I say in French, "Sot gar nit geholfen." Jews kept on doing this sort of thing, and they competed, and 89% of Jews in the Palo settlement were running inns and taverns. They tried to be as nice as they could, and they let the Cossacks and the peasants and the others buy vodka on credit. At a certain stage, you say, you know, you've got to pay up. At the end of the day, the Bach's warning actually was fulfilled, and the Jewish Poland basically was destroyed. The last tshuva of the Bach is an interesting one. It's a legal question. Say there are two Jews, okay? One has a concession on all the timber in a huge estate in eastern Poland. The other Jew runs the tax collecting the customs office in the port. Now the Jew with the timber has come to the port. He's shipped his logs down the rivers as they used to. He wants to load ships to take them to wherever they're going to take them, and he's going to get the profit. But the Jew who runs the customs says, just a second, you owe me customs. You can't do international trade without paying customs. So the Jew who has the estate says, yes, and this isn't mine. I'm working on behalf of the Poritz or the non-Jew. So I shouldn't be paying tax because the Poritz would not be paying tax. So the Bach had to answer that, and he actually said, if you read the tshuva, it's very interesting. He says, actually, if a Jew is working as an agent, he's only a tax farmer for the Poritz. By the way, the word Poritz is from Poretz Geder, who has no boundaries, who smashes things wherever he can. This ridiculous figure who is not bound by any laws. And he says, look, if you're coming through the agency of the Poritz, then you are like the Poritz and you don't pay tax. But if it's your own timber that you grew and you are selling for a profit, then you have to pay the tax. But there are many, I'm going to stop share. There are many questions like this that come up not only in the Bach, but in all of the Polish and East European poskim of that time, because the Jews, as I said, became important in a way like they were in Spain, but they're only important until they're not important. And the residue of hatred which is engendered by Jewish success, doesn't matter how, is likely, like the chickens, is going to come home to roost. So this is it, folks, for the Bach. We've done the Ramah, Marshall, and Bach, a very interesting trio, 16th century Europe. When we come back, in Mirza Hashem after Pesach, we're going to go to a sunnier clime, And we're going to deal with the Tshuvot, with Responsa literature, and one of the most famous Jewish women of all time. So if I'm talking about a Jewish woman in the 15th and 16th centuries, talking about warm countries,
Donna Grazia.
I'm
Donna
talking
Grazia
about
Mendez.
Donna Grazia. So we're going to have a look at Donna Grazia as she appears in the Responsa literature in Itz Hashem after Pesach, and also, of course, dovetails with the idea of freedom, the way Jews have struggled always to try and escape from anti-Semitism and barbarism to a place in which they can practice their religion freely. It's also, of course, the only time before the modern era when actually Jews got together politically and economically to fight anti-Semitism. All that after Pesach. So I'm going to wish everybody a Chag
Kushon
Kasher,
Pesach.
V'sameach, Besorot Tovot,
Amen.
One last
happy
question.
outcomes.
I may have missed a point somewhere.
Yeah,
Bottom line,
yeah.
today, is Chadash permitted in Chutz La'aretz or not?
According to Ashkenazi poskim, it is permitted. Okay, but if you want to be very frum, then you can adopt the Sephardi view, and you can be makbid on Chadash. I'll just share with you something that I heard from Dayan Gershon Lopian. Now, I don't know whether you heard of the Lopian or Lapian family, but Reb Elia Lapian was certainly one of the greats from Kelm in Lithuania through London and Eitz Chaim to Kfar Hasidim. Okay, the author of Leiv Eliyahu, very well respected in the yeshiva world. His grandson, Gershon, was a dayan in London. He was once asked this very question, Jack, do we have to keep Chodosh or not? And he said, look, my father, the very frum, didn't keep Chodosh. My grandfather, Reb Elia, he didn't keep Chodosh. Am I frummer than them? So you have to decide how frum, Jack, you want to be before you start getting into the niceties of Chodosh. Okay? And I could say the same thing about many of the fashionable prohibitions we do tend to share with each other on Pesach. So I leave it to you to do according to your wisdom, as David said to Solomon, Va'asita kachokmatecha. So, Chag Kasher v'sameach, Gut Yontef, Bonfet, and Besorot. And we will resume in in 3 weeks' time, the Wednesday after Isru Chag or Acharon Shel Pesach.